Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 529 for the 9th of December 2018. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. Now, thank you to all those people who've been inquiring about my health. I'm almost better, almost completely better. I had the flu, bronchitis, cold, who knows, a mixture of things. Knocked me out for a little while, knocked me about, but I'm almost completely back on deck. Coming up on this week's show, more from Maynard. This week, Maynard speaks to Carrie Poppy from the Ono, Ross and Carrie podcast. Carrie was a guest here in Sydney last month at Skepticon, the Australian Skeptics National Convention. Carrie's going to be talking about drinking her own urine, maximum fun podcasts, cryotherapy, and adventures in making the Ono, Ross and Carrie podcast. Following that, it's Skeptics in the Pub, where I take over the job of Maynard. Maynard couldn't make Skeptics in the Pub this time around, so I interview pub goers and ask them about what sort of podcast they would like to hear. What other issues out there could be covered by podcasts. And I'm delighted to say there were quite a lot of first-time pub goers at Sydney Skeptics in the Pub just the other night. Following that, it's the Raw Skeptic, Heidi Robertson, with an update. An update via a media release about the vaccination rates generally here in Australia, and the news is good. Despite the concerted efforts of the anti-vax crowd, mob brigade, rabble, the vaccination rates in Australia are improving. And then to round off the show, a silly season report, a crazy report about the earthquake mystic. There's a man who claims he can predict earthquakes by studying the alignment of the planets. Yes. Listen out during the course of the episode for more announcements about things going on in the skeptical world here in Australia. And good news, the Maynard calendar for 2019 is now available. If you go to maynard.com.au, which I'm sure you do, to check out Maynard's fabulous podcasts, you can download your free copy of the 2019 Maynard calendar. Yes, spend each month with Maynard. Well, that's enough from me. I'm going to, I'm downstairs at the moment. I'm recording in a different part of the studio. That's probably why you can just about hear a clock ticking, which you normally can't. There's a cat half asleep down behind me. I'm going to run over to the kitchen, make myself some ginger tea, which is always good when you're feeling a bit low. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
Look, we're going into the special. Richard, so how was it, Richard Saunders, out there?
I died. I was horrible, but Carrie was... She was wonderful.
Now, someone picked you up.
Goodness, she was there.
Someone picked you up on a mistake immediately. I posted the photo of one of your early ones. You spelt Loch Ness, L-O-C-K.
Oh, no.
It wasn't me. It was autocorrect.
On the slide there, probably was there. Oh, just have a comfy seat there, and I'll put the awkward seat here. Yes, I'm here with the wonderful Carrie Poppy from Ono, Ross and Carrie. I listened to the show that came out last night, and it was Brother Sage talking about soaking feet in urine. Again, it was the piss stuff going down here, which I thought was pretty cool. Has this been one of the most difficult ones to do and strangest ones to do, drinking your own pee and others?
Yeah. I mean, it's certainly the grossest.
Yeah, and why this one? Because did you get to some Patreon goal or something to do this?
Yeah, well, we're on a network called Maximum Fun, and so every year we do a fundraiser where, we call it a fundraiser, of course, where we ask for new members, and one of our goals was if we get 4,000, I believe, new and upgrading members this year, that we would do urine therapy, which had long been on our list.
And you thought you'd never get there, and that's why you went, 4,000.
Yep. Yeah, we had goals at 1,500, 2,000, 2,500. We thought, okay, 4,000, if we get that many, we deserve to have to drink our own pee. And then we got there and thought, oh, crap.
Oh. Well, I would recommend checking out that network because there's also Judge John Hodgman and one of the newer ones, Friendly Fire, that I enjoy, I think, which is all about war films. And before you go running away, it's actually a fun way of looking at war films because they are always looking for the Don Rickles in every episode, because Don Rickles has special significance. He was in Kelly's Heroes, he was in Run Silent, Run Deep, and he has googly eyes. So there's always a googly-eyed guy in a war film.
Oh, I'm glad you've been listening to it. There's so many new good shows on Max Fun.
Yeah.
There are a few I haven't heard, and that's one of them.
Yeah. Oh, no, Ross and Carrie. I've just been thinking, there's the Scientology one you did. The one that I remember it was where you would go and be frozen briefly in the gym, and it was cryogenic, some sort of thing. What was that? Was that a pool of water? What was that?
Oh, cryotherapy. It was, what's it called? Was it liquid nitrogen, or would that make me pass out? It was some sort of just cold air that they pump into the room for about 2 minutes, and then it gets down to like -200 Fahrenheit, and supposedly that's really good for your muscles. I don't know that it is, but people have actually died in those.
Yes, I was going to say someone accidentally put themselves in it, or maybe they intended to, and they died that way because there's no one around. They was in there too long. So that's any therapy that leads to that is probably a bit of a red flag. Yes,
though, just so I don't seem too much of a hypocrite. Dosage matters, right? So
yes,
sometimes,
that's true.
Yeah, you can think of it like a vaccine. People will say, well, there's mercury in that. That's a toxin, Well, likewise, you can probably spend 2 minutes, but not 5 minutes in one of these chambers. That said, a vaccine is going to prevent a deadly illness. Going in cryotherapy isn't going to do much for you at all.
And Carrie, you've been along to some of the anti-vax rallies and things like that. You've been along to some rallies, which I think is a good thing. And I think more skeptics and people who are of the scientific bent should go along and just listen. Because and see, why are they like this? And often it seems to be not so much because, they are suspicious of the science, but they're very suspicious of the consumerism and marketing and capitalism of the large companies. I think that's almost a bigger bit than the actual science.
Yeah, I think people are skeptical of the policies around these big corporations, and that's fair, Definitely, there is a profit motive going on. I think also there's just a bit of a suspicious mindset that's also attracted to that world, and a lot of environmentalism. People who, it really hits them in their gut, this concept that if it's natural, it's better. And I kind of understand that, because on one level, if it is natural and we know that it's not going to kill you, well, that means that it probably evolved alongside humanity, and if it hasn't been identified as a toxin by now or a poison, then it's probably relatively safe. I kind of get the logic, but it is something we kind of eventually have to get over because things like houses and soap are unnatural, but
very
pretty necessary.
So. That's true. And what's Ross like to work with there? I mean, you seem quite... and also, you used to say each other's names. At the beginning of the show, when I was first listening, you would say his name, he would say your name, and I never noticed until some small kid brought it up with you, and I never noticed it.
Ah, really? That's so funny.
Never noticed it.
Yeah, we don't do it every time, but we do it every once in a while. We'll start the show and I'll say, and I'm Ross Blotcher, and he'll say, and I'm Carrie Poppy, and we just go in as if nothing has happened. Yeah, I think I do it a little more than he does. After a while, he started being like, no, you're not. You are not Ross. I am Ross.
And you also have a feature in your show which comes up from time to time, the Jumbotron. Yes. This is where various people can send messages to their friends through your show. How does that work?
Oh, they just sign up on the website, on the Max Fun website. So almost all the shows on Max Fun except Jumbotrons, and you pay a small bit of money, and you can say, say happy birthday to my husband or whatever.
You had a marriage proposal on your show. Now, how has that gone? Has the wedding happened? Is there a divorce in the works? I mean, imagine proposing on a podcast. That's budget. That's real budget. I mean, it's not even FM radio. I mean, really.
Oh my gosh, yes, that was so wonderful. It was my dream that someone would propose on the show, and then someone did. Someone whose fiance now was a really big fan of the show. And so he wrote to us and said, okay, I'm planning this whole thing. I don't want her to hear the episode with me outside the room, obviously. So we had to time it with him and make sure it came out on the right day and everything. But he took a video of her listening to it and accepting the proposal.
Did she scream?
She didn't scream. She kind of froze with a big grin on her face watching it. And then it was really funny. He left the camera on a little too long, so there was a pretty long makeout session at the end of this video. And so Ross and I were watching it like, all right, okay, well...
this might be going somewhere. We should push stop.
Yeah, clearly she said yes. Good job.
and tell me, there was that really creepy time you had. You said you have never really felt in danger, except you headed danger off the past once. You've been taken to some strange places by some strange people once. And I've got to say, look, how many podcasts do people put themselves physically in danger for and take their time and their effort? But you felt a bit creepy at this one time. What was it?
Yeah, I think you're talking about Tony Alamo Christian Ministries. So this is a cult that, I use the word cult carefully here. It genuinely is one, run by a man who was in prison for taking underage brides. So he was eventually arrested basically for child rape. And the people who follow him are very devout and had committed assaults in his name. I mean, some pretty dangerous belief here. So when we showed up, we knew, okay, this is a little on the edge here. But we were willing to take the risk. And then we started discovering every place they were taking us to, we couldn't get cell reception, and we were kind of in the mountains, and our partners were getting really worried, and we said, okay, we've got the story. We don't need to continue scaring everybody.
So nothing creepy actually happened. You just thought, we've just done enough. We've gone down there.
I mean, creepy things would happen, but they weren't happening to us, really. Like, we had dinner with this one couple who we knew from our research that their daughter had been one of the underage brides and had gotten out. And as we were talking to them, she came up, and we didn't want to give away that we knew too much, so we were just letting them tell the story, and they got this very vacant look in their eyes and said, oh, well, our daughter was a liar, and it felt very inhuman to talk to these parents who had been sort of brainwashed into disowning their daughter, and so it was very creepy, but I can't say that there was some immediate threat to our safety.
Well, look, there was a bit of a threat to your safety because you had some flat earth pizza at one stage as well when you first got into the whole flat earth thing. Because where would you just... a pizza restaurant is a good place to discuss it. And that has really blown out to something too. What do you think the flat earthers are... I've spoken in the UK, they tend to be a bit David Icke-ish and they tend to be a bit religious. What's driving the flat earth thing in the US?
Well, they will tell you that it is not a religious thing.
It's not?
But I would say 99% of them are fundamentalist Christians. So I do think that's probably at the center of it for most of them, but not all. I have met a couple who were irreligious, and for them it's just sort of they feel like they're thinking outside the box, and that...
They're being skeptical.
Yes, and that... they trust their own eyes, and the fact that you've been fed this misinformation and not questioned it, that says something about you. I think a lot of that comes down to science education. We don't have the greatest science education in the public schools in the U.S., and they've probably been failed, really.
Yeah. And you had Mark Sargent on your show, and he's dare I say, a good spokesman for the flat earth because he pretty much states his case, and he's willing to give a bit of an argument. So I would recommend Mark Sargent on Oh No, Ross and Carrie. That's a good show to listen to because it sums up the flat earth stuff. Because when you were out there in the field with the people, I was so frustrated. It was like, just get this over with, you people, just do it. And because they wanted to argue, didn't they? Even when the experiment was not going their way.
Yeah, and, that goes in both directions. Everyone comes out there, trying to prove their point of view, and certainly the people who believe the Earth is round, we're doing the same thing, But, this openness to being proven wrong, that's a hard thing to adopt no matter who you are. It was actually Ross who went out with them on that flat Earth experiment. I wasn't there. I had to be with our lawyer for a whole other reason. But,
Drinks.
Drinks, right? I wish. Yes, so it certainly can be frustrating. I don't know why. I have a pretty high threshold for that sort of thing. So when we were talking to Mark Sargent, when we were talking to Jaron, another flat earther, I find it kind of intellectually frustrating, but I don't get that feeling. I think instead I'm able to feel sort of delight at, look at the human mind. My God. It's such a wonder.
And look, you were out there doing the buzzword, which was paranormal. In the great, it was Cryptids, Ghosties, Oh My, you were looking at there. Some classic for paranormal stuff. What were you there mainly for? You got much experience in the ghost. What's your main area?
Oh, well, so, Ross and I embed ourselves in all sorts of extraordinary claims, and we're pretty broad about it. I wouldn't say that we have one particular thing we do, though I think the thing we're best known for is our spiritual investigations, embedding ourselves in Mormonism and Scientology and the Self-Realization Fellowship and these spiritual groups. And I do like to think about how spiritual claims are connected to other paranormal claims. I think that sometimes we take for granted that connection. So, but I guess you'd have to ask Richard why he picked me.
well, you're obviously represented out there.
Well, thank you.
Now, how about, I should know Ross and Carrie, how about Ross wears a kilt one day? That could be a kilt-wearing thing. Is that something kind of thing he might do on the show? If he's drinking his own urine, wearing a kilt should be pretty easy.
Oh, I don't.
Wear a kilt around LA for a day, see what happens.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I don't think he'd have any objection, but usually our standard is there an extraordinary claim at the center? And I'm not sure there is one for kilts. Yeah.
Right, good point there. Is there one that you'd like to do that you don't think you'll ever get to do because of its difficulty?
Oh, great question.
Because the few the drinking urine one, yes, you can do that, but I'm just trying to think, is there something that's either too expensive to do or you have to travel too much? What's the one that is a really bit out of your reach at the moment?
See, this is tough because we try to be secret about our investigations, so I'm immediately thinking, well, what if we get to do it? But, okay, I'll throw this one out there. I would really love to go visit John of God, who is a faith healer in South America. Okay. And
again, that sounds a bit dangerous too.
It might be. It might be. But he's really out in the middle of nowhere, and
so does he lay on hands and heal? How does he do it?
Yeah, there's a variety of things. Once you get there, they do give you herbal remedies and things like that. But then you just try to get in his presence, and his aura heals you. And people go there for cancer. People go there for HIV. I mean, it's quite suspicious. And so we've wanted to go there a while. We thought we had a donor on the line for that investigation, and then that fell through. And so, that one's a little bit out of our reach. But maybe someone listening to this will
step up to the mark, people.
Yeah, exactly.
What about that guy who heals with his loving gaze? There's a guy who gazes very slowly across the room. Have you done him yet or not?
Yeah. Are you talking about Brotto?
I think that, Brotto, because he came to Australia and gazed at everybody, and I just think that is the perfect. Because you don't have to do anything. You just got to come in, smile, and be nice for like a couple of minutes, and then you're off.
Oh, what a gig, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I saw him when he was in Austria. I was there for their TED conference in Austria, in Vienna, the very week he was there. And I thought, oh my gosh, too perfect to not go.
So he heals with his healing, loving gaze.
Yep.
How does it actually work?
I mean, it doesn't.
There's no mechanism explained, is there?
Right, yeah. When he looks across you, it has this spiritually healing power. And also, apparently, this is very interesting to me, his voice supposedly has a healing power, but he doesn't speak.
Yes, well...
So what use is that?
For fans of Get Smart, think of this guy as a real-life version of Simon the Likeable on an episode of Get Smart. There was a guy who was just so nice and people could not do anything to him. They just liked him. Simon the Likeable on Get Smart. This is what this guy's doing.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, he just looks out over the crowd and smiles. And it's not even a big grin. It's just sort of a sublime, peaceful look. And he does it for about 3 to 6 minutes every healing. And there will be maybe 200, 250 people in the room. And then he leaves.
What a gig, again.
I know! And he travels the world doing that.
Does he have a warm-up guy that just smirks at people? You know, as a support act. You know?
That's so funny.
Yeah.
He does have this group of mostly young, beautiful women who introduce him. I don't remember them particularly gazing at us, though.
Okay, right. Because I thought, because you'd have someone who's not as good a gazer as him. And then when he comes on, they go, oh, that guy's world-class gazing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. You know, what's interesting about Brazzo, though, if you listen to the episodes, we dig into his past, and his past is pretty checkered.
What, as in other sort of falsehoods, or what?
Well, one could make the argument that he was present for a very suspicious death of which he was the only witness.
Wow, okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Pope.
Not the Pope.
The seventh.
But his former guru.
Right,
so the person that he sort of inherited his following from died in a very mysterious way with only Brazzo present. Mm-hmm.
That is great. It's been great meeting you here. I met you first at TAM in Las Vegas many years ago, and you guys have just been powering on. And back then you weren't doing the show every week. Now you're doing it every week. Yes. Oh no, Ross and Carrie, go have a listen to it. That's cool. How come you and Ross haven't gotten over this by now? Because I must explain, they go to the whole seminar. They just don't go for 5 minutes, tape it and come back. They go to all the Scientology things they had to go to. You spend a lot of time and certain to of money invested in doing this show. When are you guys going to get the gutful of it?
Hopefully never. I don't know. I mean, we picked these topics because we're fascinated by them and we're kind of delighted by them. If we didn't find it fun, it would be drudgery, but we do.
So I'm thinking that this would translate to, if you could get the footage, it would translate well to a reality show because you'd have a little bit of footage of you guys doing it, then the two of you could be sitting arguing about the whole thing as you do to a certain extent. Have you ever tried to give that a go? But I guess filming it it's a whole new dimension of legal stuff you have to do, isn't it?
Yep. So probably twice a month we hear from a TV producer who wants to turn our show into a TV show. And every single time we say, well, here's the thing. I think the strength of our show is the undercover aspect. That's what makes us able to get this this genuine experience of someone coming in off the street without them knowing we're reporters and putting on the spin. So, okay, how would we keep that intact?
Oh, I got the answer for that. Okay. So people would play you on the TV show. So who would play Ross and Carrie on the TV show? It'd be like Charlie's Angels, except with the two of you. And who would play you?
Okay, so you're starting to get to where I always get to, which is if it were a show, I would want it to be an animated show.
Oh, even better.
Yeah, because then I think you could show the things that we're recalling, and sometimes we get very imaginative and use a lot of silly analogies and things, and I think that could be really fun. If it were a scripted live action, who would I want to play me?
Yeah.
She's a bit older than I am, but I love Toni Collette, and I think she has a similar energy to me. So maybe I'd pick her.
I'm thinking Zelda from Dovey Gillis, the intense woman who was really smarter than everyone else, and they wouldn't give the due to her. I reckon Zelda. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. And then for Ross, I mean, it would have to be David Duchovny.
Oh,
obviously.
God, yeah. Obviously, yeah.
So we're picking two people who are 15 years our senior, but still, I'm picking them.
You've been to one of his gigs?
David Duchovny?
He sings.
Oh, no.
He has done 2 singing tours of Australia. And I've spoken to everybody, and everybody's in for the VIP experience, and everyone's going, oh, yeah, he was great. And what was the singing? Oh, the singing, the show wasn't that great. But in between, he'd speak, and it was great. So,
That's so funny. Well, Ross looks nearly the spitting image of David Duchovny. He's a tiny David Duchovny because Ross is 5'4", I believe. Wow. But, yeah, no, I mean, and now that Ross is entering his mid-30s, and that was sort of the height of David Duchovny's career. Oh, my goodness. Everyone who meets him is like, do you know who you look like? Spitting image.
Look, Carrie Poppy, it's been great chatting to you. Now, where can people interact with you and maybe give some comments on what you're up to?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so our Facebook page is very active. So that's at facebook.com/onrac, ONRAC. And then we're also on Twitter at Ono Podcast, and I'm on Twitter at Carrie Poppy. Yes, not Carrie Poppy. That's someone with an egg for an icon.
Carrie Poppy, thank you very much for visiting us here in Australia, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Did you just call me Ross? I think you just called me Ross.
I don't. Look, wind the tape back.
No, it's great.
It's worked. All those years of saying the wrong name. You've sucked me in. Have a good time. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Principles of Curiosity. Canberra Skeptics present a screening of Principles of Curiosity. Principles of Curiosity is a free film from Skeptoid Media. It presents a general introduction to the foundations of scientific skepticism and critical thinking, focusing on the simple process we call the free C's. Canberra Skeptics, for their December meetup, will be hosting a screening of Principles of Curiosity. They will also be grabbing a quick drink afterwards, so feel free to stay around and chat. The screening will be on Sunday, the 16th of December, from 3 p.m. in the Blarney Room, which is in the King O'Malley's Irish pub. For more information, go to Meetup and look for Social Skeptics Canberra, or just follow the links in this week's show notes.
It's all very exciting.
Well, it's all happening here at Skeptics in the Pub, the last Skeptics in the Pub for 2018. I'm here with Trish from the committee, and Trish, of course, you've got a semi-regular segment on the Skeptic Zone these days.
Yeah, it'll be more regular when I get rid of this cold, to be honest.
I look forward to hearing it. Jessica Hazard-White, hello.
Hello, Richard. It's good to see you.
Thank you very much. Me too. I'll be glad when I'm over my whatever it is. So you're making an interesting point just now, Trish, for those people listening around the world. Yesterday here in Australia, a man was taken into custody. Today he's been was he charged yesterday or today? Okay. Charged with a murder which is 37 years old, right? And his name's Chris Dawson, and this came about partly because of a podcast called The Teacher's Pet, which is now an infamous podcast, which went through hours and hours and hours of evidence and interviews and stuff, and was probably one of the reasons the police were prompted to re-investigate whatever. And you made a very interesting comment.
Well, I just think, like, what other social issues are there out there that we could solve with a podcast? So podcasts are they are the new radio, you know, you can listen to them on your own time. And this podcast in particular, like, it had an international following, and it was arguably the public pressure from that podcast which led to maybe the police actually getting their act together this time. Because I think everyone would admit the police really dropped the ball on this one several times. So I was thinking, like, what other social issues are there that we could maybe attack with a podcast? And there's so many to think of.
That's a very good point, because there are other podcasts, especially from the States, which involve cold cases, right? Old murders and missing people, and they investigate them. And so you're thinking, well, what other issues out there could podcasts address in detail?
Well, so there's a few podcasts out there as well that go into not only cold cases but missing people. So what they'll do is they will take an episode, will take a particular missing person, they'll describe them, they'll talk about their last known whereabouts, they'll put a picture up on their website for people to look at. Now, what if you could have something like that here? Maybe for there's been obviously a lot of issues with Indigenous people who just don't get cared about enough, so they will go missing and there'll be hardly any effort put into finding them. Same as when it comes to things like deaths in custody, that kind of stuff. If you had enough interest, which arguably you would get if you had a podcast or something like that, then maybe there'd be more effort put into investigating them. If people, I'm always under the impression, and maybe it's my naive self, but if people knew more, they'd care more.
Yeah, and well, I listened to this whole series myself, The Teacher's Pet, and I'll tell you why, because on one episode they played a long interview with a psychic, and that's what sucked me into the whole series. And I'm glad they did, because it's given me a lot of material to work from, actually. I've been able to investigate this so-called psychic a lot more. And what about your podcast listening habits, Jessica Hazard-White?
So as I've been thinking about it as you guys have been sitting here talking, and I've had an idea of the podcast that I would love to listen to, and it may already exist, and if anyone knows of something like this, then send Richard an email so he can tell me. But as a almost psychologist, I would love a podcast that was people just talking about their mental health stories, because I just love to hear that, where every episode you would have a different person talking about their experience of mental illness, mental health, things that worked for them, what didn't work. I would love to hear that. Maybe that already exists. Maybe someone else has come up with this awesome idea. But I don't know if that would solve a problem in society. I guess it would help a lot of people learn more about, diverse experiences of mental illness, that it's not the same for any two people. And I just love whenever I get a glimpse into someone's inner life like that.
So you're thinking like an interview sort of style? Interviewing people? Yes,
yeah, I would love that. Someone should do that. I would listen to it. Even if I'm the only listener, they should do it.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something like that out there, but that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And it's interesting, you were saying before, the podcasts are the new radio, but more than that, there's radio on demand, and you can listen to them easily again and again. And it seems that this particular podcast, The Teacher's Pet, may have brought us a result.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if it hasn't, what it's done is it's kind of engaged a community. So there was a memorial walk on Lynette Dawson's birthday, on what would have been like her 70th birthday weekend, and like 400 odd people turned up and memorialised her, which is amazing. And there are people, I guarantee you, they were not all her friends. Like, these will have been people who heard the podcast and went, this is a cause I care about. I think that's the thing, is it's getting people kind of more engaged in their communities as well. So local radio is great, because local radio, will cover local issues, but if you don't commute in a car, you're not going to be listening to it, or if you don't have a radio at work, you won't hear it. But podcasts, you can listen to them whenever you want. So I can listen to them in the middle of a night shift, I can listen to them whenever I feel like, and you can catch up on things, and as long as you're not too far behind. But even then, they're almost like a time capsule, so you can go back and listen to one from years ago, which I love doing. Like, if you get introduced to a new podcast, so you listen to like one of the first episodes, and they'll be talking about something happening in 2014, and you're like, nostalgia. So, they're just a fantastic medium for communication, and I think as well they're a really good insight into the trends of the day. So, like what Jessica was just saying about psychology, there are so many podcasts out there that are about other things, but the hosts will talk about their own mental health issues, and it's amazing because they normalise it. They make it like, no, that's fine. You're allowed to be, mentally unwell. You're allowed, as long as you acknowledge it, and you've come to terms with the fact that it is a real thing. And they just talk about it like it's, I bought a new pen today. It's the same kind of, just talk about it as if it's totally normal, because it is normal.
Here we are, folks, the power of podcasting. Well, thank you, Trish, and thank you, Jessica.
I just wonder how...
And we have a new skeptic in the pub, a first time here in Sydney. Hello, who do we have here?
My name is Rowland. I'm from the UK, and I live in Seoul most of the time.
That's an odd situation. How did that come about?
I moved to Seoul about 10 years ago to teach English, and I lived in Russia for a couple of years, but mostly I live in Seoul, and I enjoy teaching there.
And you were just telling me that you like to listen to the odd skeptical podcast.
I do. I started listening to podcasts about 6 years ago, I think, and one that stood out was the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and I feel like it was something that really fitted me, and then I just looked for other skeptical material, so I got Skeptics with a K, Skeptic Zone, and I've been listening for, 6 years now, and I wanted to go to QED, I couldn't. I wanted to go to various other things, but just the way it worked out, every Brit's dream, is coming to Sydney, to Australia. So I was really happy to come and to make this meeting part of my trip.
That's why I'm very pleased you did that. And listening to the Skeptic Zone for a while, normally Maynard's here at Skeptics in the pub. He can't make it tonight, so I sort of take over doing his job. And tonight we're asking people what other topics do you think podcasts should cover? What topics would you like podcasts to cover?
In terms of Skeptics podcasts, possibly my major is theology, and there is a slight kind of misconception, I think, that when people study theology they get indoctrination, which is true sometimes, but in my case it actually led me to skepticism, because especially partly as I did some philosophy, which is good for, critical thinking, and I wrote an essay about God and time, and it made me think about physics a lot. But the main thing, I had a lecturer in New Testament studies, and he laid out the Gospels, Matthew versus Mark versus Luke, what's the same, what's different. And rather than try to harmonize everything, he said, let them speak for themselves. And it led me to just kind of being more open-minded and just kind of accepting that I realized that I didn't know very much before I went. I was very suspicious of scholarship. And then I realized that actually the scholars knew something and I didn't know something. So that actually gave me a passion for scholarship, kind of, in my university days.
So, a podcast geared toward that sort of topic would interest you, obviously.
I know there's one called the Skeptics Testament, and I used to listen to that. Something that's in the back of my head that I'm not really the most able to do it, but I think some kind of YouTube channel where someone could just explain the really basics of critical biblical scholarship would be a very good thing. That might be something I should do myself, but I think I have a very boring voice, so maybe I shouldn't do it myself. But
advice I had years ago is content is king, which means that you don't have a boring voice, of course, but the idea is that, or not even produced well, or a film not produced well, if the content is interesting, that's more important than the quality. It's something to remember.
Of course, you're right, but I think skeptics appreciate that more than maybe the general public.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right too. Well, look, thank you very much for coming along tonight. Lovely to meet you. And I know Skeptics in the Pub are held all around the world, and folks, it's always worth sussing one out, and I hope you've had a good time tonight.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
We have another first-time pub goer. We have another first-time person at the pub tonight. Who do we have here?
My name's Gavin, and this is my first Skeptics in the Pub.
But you were telling me that we've met before some years ago when Pamela Gay was here.
That's right, yes. I think I've been listening to various skeptical podcasts, including the Skeptic Zone, for a number of years, and I saw this particular event come up with Pamela Gay. I was also listening to, is it the Starcast? I can't remember. It was with Fraser Kane.
Oh, you mean Astronomy Cast?
I mean Astronomy Cast, and I knew she was coming out, and I was enjoying the podcast, so I thought I'd come along and maybe meet a few folks, and it was a great night, actually. I really enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, we try to have somebody every month give a talk, from a different field of science or general interest, and sometimes it's about the crowd we had tonight, sometimes it's packed to the rafters, but I think generally people have a good time.
No, it was great. I mean, Gideon, in the talk that he was doing, I'm in pathology, which is blood testing, so a little bit aligned to what he's talking about, and certainly the power of those statistics and understanding statistics is very important, I think, and it's a poorly understood area, I think, of public health.
I think you're right. I certainly learned something tonight, which is one of the reasons I like Skeptics in the Pub, because I come along and I enjoy the talks we give, actually.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be here in person, because typically I only learn about what happens here through interviews like this and the podcast, so it's nice to be here.
And we do miss Maynard, who can't be here tonight.
In this flash little suit. Does he always wear a suit when he comes here?
Oh, he's sharp. Every time he comes here, he's looking pretty sharp. You know? Yeah. Oh, yeah. We got nods over here. Yeah.
We did actually. I went to the Powerhouse one time not so long ago with my kids, and you were doing the
the Mr. Investigator show.
You were, yeah.
With Maynard. Yes,
you were there, and we saw all the different spoon bending and dowsing, and I think there was the bed of nails and all the rest of it, and the trombone.
Yes, Maynard loves to play the trombone while he's standing on my back while I'm lying on a bed of nails. You see, yes, okay, more nods. Right. Well, great. Look, thanks for coming along tonight. Hope you come back again.
I certainly hope so. Yeah.
It's Jessica Singer. Now, Jessica, you are largely responsible for getting the talent for the Skeptics in the Pub. Tonight we had a very interesting talk about epidemiology. Gazing into the crystal ball, what's coming up?
Well, I'm currently putting out feelers and sending out emails to potential speakers for next year. So no promises yet, because I don't have anything specific, and I want to keep it a surprise anyway. But next month, well, being January, a lot of people are away. So, as we say, we don't have a speaker in January because I don't want to invite someone and have a smaller crowd for them. I don't think it's fair. So what we're going to do in January is probably have a casual, informal open mic night. And Skeptics, well, we're an opinionated bunch.
No, really?
Yeah. So people can just get up, talk about what interests them, and maybe we'll get some good ideas for topics and speakers out of that.
That's a good idea. So January Skeptics in the Pub here in Sydney. I don't think the date's set, is it?
Well, the first Thursday of the month is the 3rd of January, but we'll probably all still be recovering from our exertions of New Year's Eve, and so we're thinking that we'll probably move it to the following Thursday, which is the 10th. But keep an eye on our meetup group, and we'll announce it.
Yeah, I'll let you know, folks, when we know closer to the time. Open mic night, but we have always a good year to look forward to in 2019, I think, here at Skeptics in the Pub.
Oh, yes, I've got a lot of good leads to follow up.
Now, here's some information from our friends down in Victoria in the Mordi Skeptics. The Mordi Skeptics announced their second annual trivia night. Now, this will be from 7:15 p.m. on Tuesday the 11th of December at the Mordi Sporting Club, Mordi Victoria. Entry is only $4 and there are prizes for all. And I can speak from experience to say what a wonderful group the Mordi Skeptics are. I've spoken down there a number of years ago. And what fun it is to be involved in a skeptical trivia night. So that's trivia in Victoria at the Mordi Skeptics in the Pub, 7:15 p.m. on Tuesday the 11th of December. And for more details, check their meetup site, link in this week's show notes. It's the Raw Skeptic Report with Heidi Robertson.
Hello everyone, this is Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Firstly, before I start the report, just to remind listeners about the no jab, no pay and no jab, no play policies, which are now in effect in Australia. Both campaigns, or both policies, started with a campaign from the Daily Telegraph, and in particular Jane Hanson from the Daily Telegraph, who listeners might remember won a Skeptical Journalism Award at this year's convention. So the Daily Telegraph started these campaigns to urge the federal and state governments to crack down on vaccination rules and requirements surrounding kids entering into preschool and childcare facilities, and also the payments that families used to receive or still receive for keeping up to date with their children's vaccinations. So as of the 1st of July this year, 2018, the government brought in another part of the no jab, no pay, which meant that instead of parents whose children were not fully vaccinated, they were losing their end-of-year supplement worth about $737 per child. They're still losing the same amount of money per child, but they're now losing it at the rate of $28 per fortnight. So it's more of a constant reminder, as the Minister for Social Services has said. So that's come in as of the 1st of July 2018, that constant reminder is happening. And just today, the 6th of December 2018, the National Centre for Immunisation Research and Surveillance has come out with a media release entitled Release of NCIRS 2017 Immunisation Coverage Report and Australian Immunisation Registered Data Transfer Study Report. So this is just looking at the vaccination rates overall in Australia, and it's interesting in particular how the policies of no jab, no pay and no jab, no play seem to be having a really positive effect, which is good. So I would like to just read out this media release. And here we go. 2 new reports released by the National Centre for Immunisation Research and Surveillance, NCIRS, shine a bright new light on immunisation coverage in Australia. Detailed analysis in the NCIRS 2017 Immunisation Coverage Report shows that vaccine coverage in Australia is climbing to new highs. The proportion of children fully immunised in Australia reached 94.5% at 60 months of age and 93.8% at 12 months of age in December 2017. The proportion of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children fully immunised also reached the highest ever recorded levels of 96.9% at 60 months of age and 93.2% at 12 months of age. Levels of on-time vaccination within 30 days of recommended age increased for all children in 2017, although delayed vaccination remained higher among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. NCIRS also found that in 2017, more than 20,000 adolescents aged 10 to 19 years caught up on their second dose of measles, mumps, rubella or the MMR vaccine. A much higher proportion of overdue Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander adolescents got this dose than non-Indigenous adolescents, 20.3% versus 6.4%. Quote, "This catch-up vaccination activity is very important. While Australia has eliminated local measles transmission, outbreaks related to infected overseas travellers continue, and we need high coverage to prevent these spreading," end quote, said Dr. Frank Beard, public health physician at NCIRS. Quote, "Many of these catch-up doses given are likely a result of the Australian government's no jab, no pay policy and associated efforts to support vaccination delivery at the coalface," end quote. Summary data released by Health Minister, the Honourable Greg Hunt, earlier this year confirmed that this upward trend has continued into 2018. So national averages are going up, there's no doubt about that. But what is happening in the Northern Rivers? Well, from what we do have, we are seeing a slow but steady increase in vaccination rates, even in our very low area of vaccination coverage. So it would appear that perhaps the no jab, no play and no jab, no pay policies are having a positive effect. We'll keep you updated. But for now, this has been Heidi Robertson from the Northern Rivers Vaccination Supporters. Bye for now.
Kyle from the Data Skeptic podcast. If you're curious about the way data is changing our world, topics like AI and all this craziness with Facebook and bots and the Twitter storm and how the algorithms that underline that work, and you don't want a technical deep dive, you want it in the vernacular in a way that people can understand, check us out at Data Skeptic. That's what we try and do. I interview advanced professionals in the field who do this sort of research, and then I get into interesting projects as well. We're a weekly show, and you can find us at dataskeptic.com.
Every year in Australia, about this time, about mid-December, we come to what is known as the silly season. That is, the politicians have all gone home, Parliament is in recess, the days are getting warmer, and cricket is on the TV. Things sort of slow down a bit. And it seems to be an excuse for news outlets to run silly stories, hence the term the silly season. And I notice, surfing around at news.com.au, a story credited to a staff writer, Quake mystic Frank Hoogerbeets warns cosmic event could trigger mega earthquake over Christmas. A self-proclaimed mystic with a global cult following claims a rare planetary alignment could trigger a megaquake over the festive season. I don't know why so many people are obsessed with planetary alignments. If you get the right software and you look down upon the solar system from above, so to speak, you can make planets line up in many different ways. Often. A maverick earthquake researcher who claims to have predicted some of the world's worst earthquakes by analysing the geometric positions of the Sun, Moon and various planets, has issued a dire warning. Frank Hoogerbeets, a Dutch self-described, quote, Quake mystic, end quote, with a worldwide cult following, says a rare cosmic event due to take place over the Christmas period could trigger a megaquake, measuring up to 8 on the Richter scale. Quote, a very critical planetary configuration on the 21st of December 2018 is likely going to trigger a large earthquake between the 21st of December and the 25th of December 2018, end quote, Mr. Hoogerbeets wrote on his popular Ditrianum website. Quote, current estimation is high 7 to 8 magnitude. This is a very timely warning because many people around the world are already planning their Christmas holidays, end quote. Mr. Hoogerbeets credits himself with having forecast some of the world's largest earthquakes, and last month warned the Earth would be hit by a big one in the first week of December. What's the date today? Well, as I record this, we're just still in the first week of December. Devotees say that prediction manifests itself, albeit a couple of days early, in the form of the Alaska earthquake, which hit on the 30th of November and caused massive and widespread structural damage. Well, there you go. Mr. Hoogerbeets said that event, and the Indonesian earthquake before it, was the result of gravitational pull exerted by Venus, Uranus, Neptune and Mars on Earth, with, quote, seismic unrest, end quote, increasing in the lead up to the 21st of December. Seismologists routinely dismiss his work as misleading and unscientific, arguing there is no accurate method of forecasting earthquakes. Mr. Hoogerbeets' Ditrianum Facebook page, which features regular, quote, Quake Watch, end quote, updates, has seen a surge in popularity in recent months. amassing close to 20,000 members. Deitrianum is described as a non-profit organisation, quote, with a primary focus on seismic activity based on electromagnetic disturbance caused by planetary geometry, end quote. I'll link to this article in the show notes if you're curious. It does come with some videos that this man has produced showing how he works out his planetary alignments and so on and so forth. But again, this is a classic of this time of the year. I wonder if it's the same in your part of the world too, where the news might be slow and editors have to fill up pages somehow, so they scrabble around the internet and find these weird and wacky and offbeat stories. Well, if there's a huge Megaquake around the Christmas time, we might have to take a second look. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and thank you to all those people who support the show with Patreon or PayPal at skepticzone.tv, and thank you to the people who also support Maynard's podcasts and endeavours at maynard.com.au. Both of us really appreciate everybody out there who supports us, and Maynard actually goes that one step further. He personally thanks all the Patreons with special videos and other things over at maynard.com.au. Well, I don't think there's anything more to say. I better rest my voice because it's not completely better. Almost. It's almost completely better, but not quite. As you can hear, I'll do that. I'll rest my voice for next week's show. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics or any other skeptical organisation.
Okay, boys, whenever you're ready, go, Hugo.
Okay, so we've got 3 10-sided dice. And all 3 of us, me, Hugo, that boy over there, Charlie, and our mum, Heidi, Robertson, are going to roll all 3 dice, and we want you to predict what numbers we get.
All right, you're going to go first, Hughes?
Yep.
Okay, go. Oh, he dropped it. Okay, try again. Go.
2.
The number 2. Charlie, would you like to go now?
Yeah. 5.
The number 5. Me. Lucky number 5 again.
We got 2, 5, and 5.
2, 5, and 5.
Did you get all numbers correct?
How did you go?
If so, link down below. You did not. You did not get correct.